Dr. Shola mos-shogbamimu is with me, lawyer and political and women's rights activist. Also, Tola Munro, National President of the Black Police Association. Shola, if I could turn to you first and ask you what you make of what you've seen in the United States so far this week. Good to speak to you again.
Good to speak to you, Andrew. Look, without a doubt, the death of George Floyd set in motion, I think, what can be best described as, the underlying fear, anger, frustration, bearing in mind that it was just within a month ago that Ahmaud Arbery was shot at by two white men, and Breonna Taylor was shot at in her own house by police officers 8 times in bed. This goes on way too often for too long. And as many people and many protests have happened over decades, it looks like nothing is changing. And I think to your point about why, what is it that sets the tone of the relationship between police in the U.S. and the United Kingdom with black people? And the answer to that is the systemic racism that exists in both societies. The way that the black people are seen as inferior, the kind of stereotypical negative tropes used against them, things like thugs, the fact that they are seen as criminals. Our identity is criminalized, right? And that is what leads to the dehumanization of black people, not just by police, but by white people.
But where do you see that, Shola? Where do you see that? Guide me in that. Where do you see that so present? And I don't mean to stop you when you were, expressing yourself so eloquently, but you've mentioned systemic racism. You've said that black people are seen as thugs and as criminals. Who by?
When you say who by, it's institutional racism that is it's not only practiced.
Which institutions, Shola? Which institutions?
Or the way, look, a good example is the fact that the Home Office was called out as being racist. During the whole, the Windrush scandal, right, and how it treats the deportation of black people. That's one example. That's just one example. And can I just say, the fact that we are being asked time and time again to give examples when you can all see this is also frustrating. I should not have to explain and keep trying to educate people on what they can see with their own eyes, because that is part of the problem. That is what enables the racism. What happens when there is no video to film what happened in, for instance, in Lewisham on Saturday, where you had 6 police officers pin down one black woman? Right?
Well, I don't know anything about that set of circumstances.
I can tell you about that.
Well, we better not, because not right now. We can't back that up.
I'm saying that racism exists in all kinds of forms, covert and overt, here in the United Kingdom and in the U.S., and it is because of the way black people are perceived.
Okay, well, let me just bring in Tola Munro now, National President of the Black Police Association. Tola, good morning to you. What do you have to say to Shola here about what she's just said?
Well, I'm an operational police officer. I work for Avon and Somerset Police now. I have to agree with it completely. I mean, these issues are deep-rooted, deep-seated, particularly in America, but also in aspects of over here as well. She's quite right that the Windrush scandal was deep-rooted in this systemic institutional racism that we've spoken about. You could say that even aspects of the higher death rate amongst black communities and black medics is linked to that as well. But in this particular case, I've not watched the full 9 minutes. I can't, because it would tear me apart. But there's been so many over the years, and we're capturing them now on video. But you think about all the ones over the years that we haven't captured. I can understand people's frustration. This particular cop in Minnesota, if you look at his history, I believe history's been put up with his background.
Yes.
It's not a surprise. Not a surprise that he's done what he's done, because he's got away with it over the years, and they've let it go, and that's a failure of leadership. So we will be saying to police leaders in the UK, we want your reflection and comment on what's happening in the US, because we are sitting on the tender box at the moment as well over here.
Right.
Particularly with some of the stop and searches that have gone on in relation to COVID, that supposedly are intelligence-led, which are not, which have then resulted in stops for other reasons. In fact, there is no stop and search power for COVID. Police officers, particularly in the Met, are using this as an excuse, and they are stirring up trouble.
So how do you? Let me hold on a second. So what are you? You're alleging that people are being stopped on COVID-related investigations. Stop and search. What do you think's actually happening?
Well, there is no grounds for stop and search for COVID, but what's happening?
Are they stopping black people?
They're stopping particularly black men, but other members of the black and ethnic minority community as well. They're stopping black men. The grounds that they're claiming is COVID. They're then saying either, we can smell cannabis in your car. There's one, it's all over Twitter.
I'm off Twitter. I'm off Twitter.
Oh, right.
Get me. But how do you? But have you spoken to people in these instances? I mean, this is just hearsay, right?
No, this is hearsay, but this is passes on. Well, obviously, a number of people. This is going on for a couple of weeks, honestly. Of anybody that doubts it, go on to quit. They're stopping them for COVID, claiming COVID breaches, then using that as an excuse for a stop and search. For me, that becomes an illegal search. So the one on the weekend, again, was for something that was, I think it was in Peckham or Lewisham. There's been a couple going on.
I think Shola might have just talked about that. If you're comfortable, if you're comfortable talking about it, just give me a little bit of detail. But obviously, you'll be aware of the legals. Yeah,
so I'm aware that there's an incident I've seen is this guy surrounded black male. The original call is to several young people up to 24 or so fighting. But the guy that they deal with is older than that. He's surrounded on the video. He's surrounded by 4 or 5 police officers. He then resists for whatever reason. And this is what happens is that people get, not surprisingly, upset about being stopped and searched for no reason. Right. He then runs off. They taser him. About 4 officers jump on top of him. My understanding is that he was arrested for the resist and the assault police. But that's happened as a result of poor policing. And as a result of intelligence. Listen, we all want intelligence to deal with the serious criminals. What we don't want is innocent people being approached. And again, another video I've seen, female police officer approaches a guy and then suddenly starts putting handcuffs on him without a full explanation. Yeah, that is appalling. Absolutely poor policing. And as a police officer, I would be appalled, and the first thing I would say to that guy is, you need to take this video to the IUPC.
And race and ethnicity is a part of that. Before I let you go, Tola, you would say race and ethnicity is a part of that. And as national president of the Black Police Association, what do you do with that information?
Listen, I spend a lot of my time going out to speaking to black people saying we need to change the culture in policing, we want you in policing. But how can I do that when I see that? It is absolutely linked to race. It is absolutely linked to people's perceptions of black people, and that is linked to systemic institutional racism, and that's a sad thing to say. All
right, well, thank you, Tola Munro. Without question, strong words indeed. National President of the Black Police Association. Shola, a last word to you. He got very specific on some instances there. Is racism in the UK just as ingrained as it is in the United States?
Absolutely. I mean, Tola is spot on. And the examples he gave, I was trying to give some of those examples, like what happened in Lewisham. It is ingrained. It is systemic. It's overt and covert. It's the language that is used. It's the perception that is used. It's the weaponization of whiteness against black people. The weaponization of whiteness. By institutions.
I'm feeling guilty for doing nothing wrong apart from the colour of my skin right now, I can tell you.
Let me put it this way. Yeah. If you feel guilty, if you feel uncomfortable, Andrew, that's a good thing. Oh. Because let me tell you something. For me, when white folks feel uncomfortable, it's one of 2 things. It's either one, because you are not racist, but it's a wake-up call that there's still so much work for you to do to help to bring about the end of institutional racism. Yeah. Or second, it could be that the white person is racist and is offended by the audacity that we black people can come up, can discuss openly and boldly that the oppression of black people must end.
Philip Patrick has said something here. Before I let you go, I must let you respond to this if you don't mind. Philip says it may be an unpalatable truth, but the vast majority of street drug dealing and resultant violence in London is committed by young black men. Browsing through the crime and court section of the local press will reveal this demographic is what is euphemistically seen as criminally overrepresented. What do you say to that?
Okay, so what I will say to that is this, that to Tola's point, when he talked about how black men in particular are being falsely stopped and falsely arrested when they've not done anything wrong, that contributes to the data that he's talking about. And it's so easy to paint black people as you are the ones that have caused this, when society itself has created an environment where a number of them have no choice but to fall into this pit.
Well, okay. Well, that sounds like you're making an excuse for criminality.
Sorry, what did you say?
That sounds like you're making an excuse for criminality. A lot of us have got a lot of excuses for criminality.
The society we live in must also take responsibility when it falsely arrests, when it falsely places black people, like this black man that Shola mentioned, in that position, in that light.
Thank you.
Something that they did not do.
All right, Shola, I must.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
All right, well, thank you. I've got to let you go. It's always good to speak with you, Dr. Shola mos-shogbamimu, who is a lawyer and political women's rights activist.